Well, I confess I am not picking the scriptures based on how hard the names are. It just sort of happened that way. Sorry, Missy. I like to change it up, make it easier. You heard it this morning. The Daughters of Z. It just takes the pressure off of everybody. Mala, Noah, Hogla. I feel like that needs to make a comeback. Milcah, Tisra. These are really good contemporary names, y'all. So I think somebody needs to pick one up. I know, it's a great name. We sort of are moving around a little bit in the Old Testament. We're not going necessarily in chronological order. So here's where we are. These are the people that have been rescued by Moses, who was saved in a way by Puah and Shiphrah, whom we talked about last week. These are the people who have made it across the sea, fleeing from Pharaoh's army, but now they're stuck in that endless, seemingly endless wilderness loop. They're camped. They haven't found their way to the promised land. It's been a long time. It's not just like a little, 3-4 month hiatus. We're talking about 40 years. We're talking about, in effect, a generation of people being born in the desert. And that's where we are today. They are trying to make sense of being the chosen people, but being the outcast people. Being the ones who were called to make home in the promised land, but shacking it up in RVs in the desert. They're fighting, what does it mean to be covenant people? God made a promise to us. We made a promise to God. In order to hold up our end of the bargain, God gave the law. We're trying to follow the law, but anarchy is happening behind the scenes. The question that is before the people over and over again, it's sort of like, God's blessings are new every morning. Well, for these people, it's like tyranny is new every morning. You've got to figure out, what are you going to do? And the question was, do we keep going, believing that God will get us there, or do we go back? Because going back, I know what we're going to get. We'll be enslaved, but, they gave us 3 squares and somewhere to stay. I could do that. I know what that is. I remember what it was like. I can handle it. Or, are we ever going to get there? We've been wondering long enough. Like, do we remain faithful? Y'all have heard me talk about the endless Old Testament loop, and we're in the middle of it here. Y'all know what I'm talking about? It kind of makes a circle. The Old Testament just repeats itself. I'm not getting head nods. I need to know. You know what I'm talking about? Just tell me and I'll tell you. Not a lot of nods, so we're just going to do it again. All right. God creates people. God says, I love you, people. People say, I love you, God. God and the people make a commitment to one another. God says, hey, that's awesome. I'm going to send you rules, regulations, prophets, and people to keep you on track. People say, great, we love that. Then the people go, on second thought, we really would like to be God. We really would like all that power. And so they start doing crazy stuff, breaking the rules, breaking the laws. God doesn't like that. God punishes the people and sends stuff like plagues and things of that nature. The people go, oh my gosh, we never should have done that. Help us, God. God says, okay, I still love you. I'm going to send prophets and priests and people to show you the way again. The people come, proclaim to the people, here's how you got to go back. They say, okay, we'll do it. We love you, God. God says, I love you. They make a covenant, and the pattern starts again. That is the Old Testament over and over and over again with some nuance. We're in the middle of it right now. And you got a little bit of that in the daughter's plea. Hey, don't be punishing my daddy. He wasn't like them other daddies over here, philandering around and doing all this non-God stuff. He was faithful. He died for his own stuff. He had his own baggage, but he wasn't like them people. So you're hearing this like intertribal warfare between the God followers and the not so God followers. The people are rebelling all over the place, and they're trying to carve out faithfulness and righteousness in the middle of a very difficult life situation for all of them. But there's a shift happening, at least for these daughters, at least for this group of people, because they're starting to focus on the future and not the past. They're starting to focus on the future and not the past. And that's really the daughter's concern. The future. The future. The future. How is it that we're going to make it to the future? They're concerned about the land, about their name, about their voice, about their influence, about their credibility. And y'all know this stick. Women don't have a voice. Women don't have power. Without a husband, what do they got? Without a daddy, what do they got? Nothing. Not here. These women are standing up to injustice. Why should we be punished for all these other people's bad things? The reason the women have gotten put in a bad place is because not of the women, but the men. So why should we be punished for them? Don't punish me because of other daddy stuff and what them other sons back in the day did when you gave them all the property and inheritance. Don't punish us for that. We want to carve our own path. We want our own inheritance. We want the land that should be rightly ours, so give it to us, please. I'd like to think they added the please. That's what we have to tell Grayson all the time. Mama, give me popsicle, please. But the problem was the dad had no sons. He just had a bunch of girls. Anybody got a bunch of girls? Bless you. Brother, bless you. Without any sons, there could not be any legal inheritance. There couldn't be any mechanism by which to pass off the dad's property and inheritance to the daughters. The law had said up until this point, it's the sons. And if not the sons, then there's stipulation upon stipulation. And the solution, not a crazy, complicated solution that we find in Holy Scripture. A problem presents itself, and what was the solution? Bring the discernment to the Lord. Not complicated. When we're faced with problems, we pray about the solution, and we offer discernment to God and ask that God partners with us in our own discernment. Show us the way. Give us the truth. Now, there was obstacles along the way. Tradition could have stopped the whole thing. Moses could have ended the squabble, rendered a verdict, and no one would have bucked him because we've all said these things before. Moses could have, took the gavel, walked up to the mic, and said, no, you know what? We can't do that because you know what? We've never done it this way before. Case closed. All the good church people would have said, oh, well, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, Moses, you got it. I don't want to do that wild and new stuff anyway. Moses could have, taken the argument, taken the gavel, walked up to the mic, and said, tradition is clear. Tradition is clear. You're just a woman hush. And no one would have, well, that's how we always done it. We don't need, the new folks coming in and trying to change all the things. The carpet's been fine. We don't need to change the color. The choir, we haven't worn robes in so long. We don't need to wear the robes again. Oh my gosh, passing of the peace, why are we doing? We don't need to do any of this kind of weird thing. Feeding hungry children, we don't need Medicare and SNAP benefits. We don't need any of that. Let's just stick to what we know. Uh-oh. Pastor getting messy. I respect these women because they use their voice. And they did it in a scriptural and a spiritual way. It's a 3-point Southern Baptist sermon. Come forward, seek the wisdom of God, wait on God's instruction. 1, 2, 3. Come forward, seek the wisdom of God, wait on God's instruction. It's not complicated. And yet, they had the courage to speak up, to ask for what they believed was theirs. And it wasn't just about them. It would affect every single woman to follow. And in this moment, we have a breakthrough in women's rights. Ultimately, what they did was very, very, very simple. They saw an injustice, and they chose to speak versus remaining silent. Women have been doing this all throughout human history. We see an injustice, we must say something, and they speak, and they do, and they show us the way. Sojourner Truth, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Amelia Earhart, Rosa Parks, Ruby Bridges, and one of my personal favorites, Lee Joyner. There's an injustice, we must speak, and we've got to say it, not for us, but for everyone that will come after us. Perhaps our greatest example of the fight of injustice was Dr. King, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. In his letter from the Birmingham jail in April of 1963, he said these words. He said, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, for we are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one affects all. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly." Dr. King was the leader of the direct nonviolent movement. Direct action, nonviolent action. Injustice happens, you speak to it directly. It's just like these women. They came to the meeting tent. They came to the place where they knew influence could make a change. For King, it was courthouses, it was schools, it was churches, it was the Capitol. For the women, it was the meeting tent. It was the place where, those that made the decisions stayed. So they showed up, knocked on the door, flipped the flap open, whatever they did, and they walked in and they claimed their authority. They claimed their space. They claimed what is right. Not just for them, but for all. King said this in another sermon. He said, "History is the long and tragic story of the fact that privileged groups seldom give up their privilege voluntarily. We talked a little bit about that last week. That primarily those in power, those in the majority, will not yield to the minority if they think they're going to lose the majority. King said, history is the long and tragic story of the fact that privileged groups seldom give up their privilege voluntarily. But Moses did. The men sitting on, I just imagine like a court scene. The men sitting on the right and the left, powdered wigs, way up high. Everybody's expecting them to do the thing that they always do, but they don't. And there's an interruption in the story of God's people in this moment. Come forward, seek God's wisdom, and wait on God's instruction. We Methodists are really good at this, to be honest with you. We've lost some of that recently, but all throughout the history of Methodism, Methodists always spoke up against social injustice. We're still doing it now. It's not as, I was talking to our bishop about this a couple of weeks ago. I'm not sure that most United Methodists know what our denominational stances are on things. I'm going to tell you to go look up something, and when you get mad, just know, I like to go to lunch. I like to go to coffee. So you're going to read some stuff that's going to set you off. I want you to Google the United Methodist Social Principles. You need to look at the new one, not 2016, but 2020/2024. You need to go read the stances of our denomination on particular social issues. Because I think in a lot of ways we're on the cutting edge. We've been doing this for years. We were the leading voice of abolition in England. We were on the front end of the women's movement in America, civil rights. We're advocates for health care. Methodists have started hospital systems all around the country. How many people go to Methodist Hospital in Houston for major procedures? We're leaders in education. We used to build schools and colleges. I went to a United Methodist college. We've talked about Lydia Patterson, a United Methodist high school on the border of El Paso and Juarez. Methodists have a long history of seeing injustice and making sure we right the wrong. A couple years ago, at a prior congregation, I got into some trouble. Surprise, are you shocked? This was right after COVID. Y'all might remember in Louisiana, we passed some very, very strict abortion laws. If you think about that, go back to those days. And United Methodists are very vocal about abortion. And you should know where your denomination stands. Pretty much, we are in opposition to Louisiana law. United Methodists stand against non-access to abortion for women. We believe that there ought to be a way for women, when they are in crisis, particularly when it comes to rape and incest, they should have a right and an access to health care. Now, this stands in opposition to many states' laws, and that's okay. We don't have to agree on everything, but we believe that women ought to have an option. And I started speaking. I had a problem, and I said something. Now, y'all know me. Sometimes I don't say things with the right, And I think it's wrong. I really do. I think it's wrong that our current abortion laws in this state make no exception. I appreciate my colleagues, and I appreciate some of you who have told me about your beliefs about this, and some of you say you're pro-life, and I appreciate that. I appreciate the pro-life stance. I just wish it wouldn't stop at the womb. I wish there was more pro-life stances in our world today. I think adoption ought to be more affordable. I think foster care should be talked about more. I think the access to foster care ought to be greater than it is today. I've said this in this pulpit, that the death penalty needs to be abolished. I don't think you can have a pro-life stance and support the death penalty. I just don't. I think health care should be more affordable. In particular, I think children and seniors ought to have more access to health care. I think those with pre-existing conditions should have more access to affordable insurance coverage. I think we live in a world where we should make a mandate that no kids and seniors have to go hungry. Kids and seniors should never, in the United States of America, struggle with food insecurity. I think we need more funding for mental health. I think a stance that says and is built upon valuing life is the right stance, because I think it's a Christian stance. But to stand up is hard. To speak up is even harder in the world we live in today. Friends, we don't have to agree. We don't have to agree. I just wish we'd talk to one another more respectfully. I wish our world could learn from the church. Because I know sitting in these pews, there are you who disagree with some of what I've just said. And you hadn't ran at me with pitchforks yet. I'm waiting, Because I think we love one another, but even more, we love God. And we know that we're not God, and we don't have the mind of Christ yet. We're not perfect. So maybe I'm wrong. I'm okay with that. But I'm going to come forward. I'm going to seek God's wisdom. And I'm going to wait on God's instruction. Many of the heroes of our faith have left such a legacy of speaking to injustice when they believe something is wrong, of coming to the meeting tent and showing up at schoolhouses and courthouses and speaking up for what they believe is biblical and right. It's a great legacy to have. And today, alongside these names and these pictures and these faces of our faith, today we have the Daughters of Zelophehad, who show us the way. A way in the desert, a way in the wandering place, a way in the question to seek God's wisdom and to wait on God's instruction. For this and for so many more, we say thanks be to God.